Okay, I'm going to introduce my friend Dave Kindred. He was a columnist for the Louisville Courier-Journal, Washington Post, Atlanta Journal-Constitution twice, I think. National Sports Daily, Sporting News, and Golf Digest. He's a native of the thriving metropolis of Atlanta, Illinois. And he was a student at Illinois Wesleyan when he started his career at the Bloomington Pantagraph.
Well, it gave me options. Remember, I turned the volume down. Listening more.
Can you not hear us, Don?
Yeah.
Okay. Dave's one of two writers that have earned sports writing's three highest honors: the Red Smith Award, the PEN American ESPN Lifetime Achievement Award for literary sports writing, and the Dan Jenkins Medal of Excellence in Sports Writing. And he's a member of the Sports Media Hall of Fame. And he's written a lot of books, but one I focused on for this is called Glove Stories, which is a collection of his columns when he wrote for the Sporting News. And then I wanted to pitch his most latest book, which is I guess you call it a memoir, Dave, or at least a pseudo memoir. Hi, Chad. And he released this in September. It's called My Home Team: A Sports Writer's Life and a Redemptive Power of Small Town Girls Basketball. So I will let Dave take over. I appreciate you joining us and welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. The second book you held up was is just new. It's half of my career as a journalist and half and the last 13 seasons when I've been writing about the Morton, Illinois girls basketball team. And I enjoyed both aspects of that book. You know, the girls, you know, people who have, I do Facebook posts on every game. Actually, in the last 13 years, I've been to more games than the coach has been to, because the coach missed 4 games with COVID, missed a couple funerals, couple weddings. So I've been to like maybe 400 girls basketball games in the last 14 years. And it's been fun. It's kept me out of the house. It's built a community for me. You know, it gave me an excuse to write that book. You know, and it's all been fun. The baseball book just kind of grew out of my love of the game. I was a kid baseball player, you know, until I was 25 and realized that I had long since lost it. I was 3 years out of college by then, and I was playing once a week. So I finally retired when I was 25. But loved baseball forever. You know, grew up listening to Harry Carey and at nights. Those years, I'm talking about the 50s and 60s, mostly the 50s. Harry, I thought, was a real baseball broadcaster. Later, when he was in Chicago, I hope there are no Cub fans on here, but when he was in Chicago, I think he was with the White Sox even one year, you know, and then with the Cubs, I thought he was a cartoon. You know, he was a real baseball announcer when I grew up listening to him. So I grew up as a Cardinal fan, and when I worked at the Sporting News, of course, once was known as the Bible of baseball. When I was there, they were trying to cover a little bit of everything. Still, but baseball centric. So I had written just naturally a lot of baseball columns for the Sporting News, and the Sporting News put them into a book. And it's actually a pretty good book. When I pick it up and read it, you know, yeah, it's all history. It's people that I grew up knowing, that I grew up seeing play, you know, and so it was a fun book to put together. And it goes through 9/11. You know, it begins. I've got a little bit of everything in there. There's some Pee Wee Reese, some Stan Musial, Bobby Cox. I was in Atlanta during the Braves' great run when they won 14 straight division pennants. I was in Atlanta in those years, so I got to know all of those people very well. And baseball has always been a long time ago, I said if I couldn't be a Major League Baseball player, and it became very evident pretty early that that was not going to happen. I thought that I wanted to be a Major League Baseball writer. And then when I saw the work that a Major League Baseball writer does, maybe 200 games a year, counting spring training, all the travel, writing 2 and 3 times a day, especially in the internet age, where you had to feed the beast all day, every day. I decided baseball writing was the last thing I wanted to do. So I became a columnist. Been a columnist now I still count myself as a columnist, for 60 years. Hard to believe that I could be 40 years old and I've been working for 60 years, but it's true. And I've still, I should say, I guess, Jeff, that I'm anywhere close to retired. I'm tired a lot of times, but I'm not retired, and I'm not going to be. My current plan is to do a book on the St. Louis Cardinals of 1946. Stan Musial was 24 years old. He had won the MVP, I think, once then, maybe 2 batting championships by then. He came up at the end of 41, 2 weeks, and was hit 426 in those 2 weeks. Then he was with the team 42, 43, and 44 when they were in the World Series each year. 45, he was in the Navy. 46, the war has ended, and Musial is back with the Cardinals. And I count that as a pivotal time in Major League Baseball history, because the game was still the same that it had been in the 30s, but it was looking forward to the future. At that time, there were only 10 cities in Major League Baseball, because St. Louis had 2 teams, Philadelphia had 2, Boston had 2, New York had 3, 16 teams. St. Louis was the farthest west. It was the western edge of the baseball world, and it was also the southern edge of the baseball world. KMOX with Harry Carey covered all of the Southeast. Cardinal Nation took shape. So when I was looking for a book to do, I'd done 2 books recently. One about the death by addiction of my grandson at 25. And the second one is the memoir, in which I deal some with the loss of my wife. So I want to do something happier. So I thought of baseball again. The Musial in 46 was a key moment. America was kind of celebrating the end of World War II, certainly celebrating the end of the war, but the nation still was in the throes of depression. Jobs were scarce. St. Louis was a very segregated city at the time. Jackie Robinson was coming. 46, he played in Montreal. Branch Rickey will be a major character in this book I do too, because Rickey created the St. Louis Cardinals in the 30s. Into 40, he left in 42 to go to Brooklyn. So in 46, the 2 teams that wind up in a pennant race and produced the first playoff in baseball history in 46, Rickey had created both those teams. So he'll be a major character in the book. But the book will revolve around Stan Musial. He was my boyhood hero. I thought I was a right-handed hitter, of course, as most kids are. And I thought I could hit left-handed. I wanted to be Stan Musial. So I tried hitting left-handed, and I actually could hit left-handed. The only problem was that, some kind of motor deficiency, any ball thrown at me when I'm batting left-handed hit me. I couldn't get out of the way. So I thought it might be safer to just stay as a right-handed hitter. So Musial will be the main character in the book. I've done as much archival research as I can on Musial, and I've discovered that certainly there's nobody alive who played with Musial in 46. The only person I can find really right now, I have only begun the research, that actually played against Musial and is still alive. 2 people, actually, Pete Rose and Jim Maloney. Pete Rose was a rookie in 63, Musial's last year. Musial's last 2 hits, in fact, One went to the right of Pete Rose at second base. One went to the left of Pete Rose at second base. Rose later would lament that if he had been a better fielder, he wouldn't have had to get so many hits to catch Musial. So if there's anybody listening to this who knows anybody who was alive in 1946 and knows anything about the 46 season, have them get in touch with me. Actually, I've found a couple people. I worked at the Pantagraph with a man named Roger Cushman, who now is, he must be 87. And he was in that year, he was in the hospital with polio. So he can tell me about listening to the Cardinals on radio in 46 when he was 12 years old. And I found a priest, Episcopalian priest in Long Island, who can tell me about, he grew up in Webster Groves, suburb of St. Louis. He could tell me about listening to the 7th game of the World Series on the radio in school. So I'm looking for people like that can give me some kind of real life feel for that time. And I'm going to St. Louis, I think in December. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's a baseball Raiders meeting or I don't know what it is, but there's a big function January 14th in St. Louis for the Cardinals that I'm going to go to and try to meet some people there. But that's what I've done, and that's what I'm working on now. And looking forward to this season. The Cardinals cannot be worse than they were last year. And
one could only hope.
They've signaled that. They've signaled that by they didn't like their pitching, because everybody that they've signed so far have been starting pitchers, and they're still looking for another one. I think they'll be good, though. I think they'll be better. They can't be worse. Got any questions, Jeff?
Well, I want to make a couple clarifications for people that don't know. Roger Cushman is a former sports information director at Illinois State University, also worked at the Pantagraph, so he had a lot of sports knowledge that Dave mentioned, so he'll be a good resource. And he actually sent, what was it, Dave, like a 4-page recap of his memories, and you shared for me, which is really interesting. And just so you guys know, Dave recognized Major League talent at a young age, because when he played at Wesleyan, the shortstop there was Doug Rader, and they were the Keystone Combo. So, he got that. I'm convinced that if he'd had a better game the day the scout came to see Rader, that he may have been the major league. So, but that's my story to tell, and that's what I'm going to go with. So I don't know. Let's open it up to the group. I think when you talk about 1946 too, Dave, I think that's a great number, because I think that's the average of the age of the pitcher staff for St. Louis this coming year. So, that would be, that's very important all the way across the board. So I'm teasing him, he knows. So anyway, I'd like to open up to the group and see who has questions. It looks like Karen does.
All right. I have a question. Well, you're doing all this research. What do you determine is fact and what do you determine is fiction and rumors?
Well, you develop a feel for that. Firstly, you give weight to the source of it. Was it somebody who actually did the work? Was it somebody who was there? Fiction is pretty easy to, a lot of anecdotes, you don't know if they were true or not. But after, one of the things that a newspaper person, a journalist depends on is just kind of they call it a nose for news, an instinct. You can generally tell if somebody is embellishing a story or if it's just too good to be true. But you have to be careful. I've got over by my chair in front of the TV, maybe 35 books on the Cardinals and Musial and Branch Rickey. Bought a Branch Rickey book the other day by a guy named Lee Lowenfish, 700 pages. I've happily had an index so I could just look up the parts where Stan Musial is mentioned. But it depends on the source. You get a feel for who should know, who would know. and how well that they can tell the story, how well they corroborate it, where they get the information, and baseball is well recorded. Baseball is well documented. I mean, at the start here, Ryan talked about a book on the '05 White Sox. Now, who cares about the '05 White Sox? Not me, but there'll be a lot of people buy that book because a lot of people paid very close attention to the '05 White Sox, just like a lot of people paid attention to the 2011 Cardinals. I mean, baseball is well documented every day of every game, now multiple ways. Pretty hard to pass anything off as fiction when everything is now on videotape. You can see everything. I mean, there are more statistics in baseball than there are in the national gross product. It's unbelievable the things that you can find out. Like even the Cardinals, the pitchers that they've signed so far, one of Sonny Gray came from Minnesota. And I saw that the analytics show that Sonny Gray had the highest ground ball percentage of any pitcher in the American League last year. Okay. So I guess that's good if you've got Arenado at third base and Goldschmidt at first base. You got a good infield. You want them hitting ground balls. So that had something to do with the Cardinals signing that guy. But it's something that, again, Karen, baseball has more people writing and reporting on it than any other sport there is. So, and you can generally tell fact from fiction just by the way it sounds, the way it smells to you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Who else? Fire away. You see Tom up there? You're muted, Tom, if you're saying anything.
Yes.
Okay, now can you
Looks a
hear
lot
me?
like Stan
Yep.
Musial.
Okay,
Yep.
this is I bought this at a yard
Yeah.
sale some years ago. It's a hand-drawn picture of Stan, and I love this one. And actually got two questions to go on this.
Pretty good.
One, he had one of those free swinging approaches to hitting that I've ever seen. When you go back and watch the video of him, just so fluid. But what's always interested me is, I was growing up as a kid, I tried to hit left hand some. I wanted to imitate Stan's swing, but I kind of thought about it a little bit too when you were talking about this. I'm trying to remember if there was any other major leaguers that came along and tried to imitate his swing. It was kind of unique in some ways, but I'm not sure I could ever point to somebody and say, that guy made it. And he would say, the reason I'm a good hitter is because I tried to hit the ball like Stan Musial. You ever heard anybody say that they tried to copy his swing and things?
No, a lot of people were advised to never try to copy Musial's stance. Because he was in the crouch, and bent over, and was described by a pitcher named Tim Lyons as looking like a little kid looking around the corner to see if the cops are coming.
That's a good one.
He was looking over his right shoulder at the pitcher. In later years, I've seen Musial talk about he straightened up some, but when he was really good, he was in a crouch. Pete Rose, batting left-handed, had a crouch. Although Rose's body was nothing like Musial's.
Nothing,
real stocky and even ugly, actually. Musial was smooth and graceful. I saw a video of Musial just today. I was looking up something, and this kind of came as news to me. It shouldn't, because I've saw him swing a lot of times. But he took a huge, long stride.
Yes.
From his back foot was maybe a foot, 2 feet in front of the back line, and his front foot was on the front line. He covered almost the entire box with the stride. Nowadays, I don't think anybody does that now. Everybody's throwing 100 miles an hour now too, so you got no time for a step that long. But Musial did it, And he was able to, he just said he had some kind of like innate instinctive concentration where he could see the ball. And probably from years of looking at pitches, years of situations, he knew what was coming. Said he later lost that concentration with age, as most all of us do. You know, when he got to be 42, 43 years old, he could no longer guess with the pitcher. And and by then too, he was not able to hit it to left field when he wanted to. You know, early on he could hit it anywhere he wanted to, any way he wanted to. But it was again, I never saw him play. I don't think I ever saw him play in real life. I saw maybe a game on television once or twice. I went to St. Louis a couple times late, but I don't remember seeing him be good. So what I'm trying to do with this book is recreate that time when he was as good as he was ever going to get. 46, he led the league, hit 365. 48, he hit 375. You know, so he was as good as he was ever going to be in the book that I want to write. And that's the feel that I wanted. The title I'm playing with is Becoming Stan the Man. Because the nickname Stan the Man didn't get put on him by Bob Bragg, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, until September of 46, after a series in Brooklyn, when Bragg heard the Brooklyn fans chanting. He thought they were chanting, "Here comes that man," because Musial was beating the Dodgers badly every time they played. And he was told by the Dodgers publicity man, says, no, they're saying, "Here comes the man." So Bragg, on the train on the way from Brooklyn back to St. Louis, wrote a column in which he described that. And that's when Musial became Stan the Man. And that was when he was at his very best. They called him the Donora Greyhound, from Donora, Pennsylvania. He was like 6 feet, 6'1", maybe 175. And while you can't tell it by looking at old films, because they got these baggy old wool uniforms on, you know, it looks like either the uniform is like 12 sizes too big for Musial, or he really weighs about 120. But he was very fast. He led the league in triples. I mean, he had one year he led the league with 20 triples. I don't know if that's a testament to how bad the outfielders were, or if it was just a testament to he hit line drives everywhere, and he could run.
How deep the outfields were. Yeah. Now I've got another question for you, and you've brought up this beautifully, and I can't wait to read this because I actually am a little too young. I really started following the Cardinals in '64, and of course Stan retired in '63. But outside of friends from this area that are loyal Cardinal fans, and I think even some Cub fans will have to admit to his greatness too. But it's interesting to go places, and I don't want to say he's undervalued in some ways, but you asked the general fan to name like the 5 greatest baseball players ever, they won't always name Stan. But if you bring up his name and you say this, they'll go, "Oh yeah, I suppose I could have put him in there too." Do you think his reputation needs a little rehabilitation among modern fans to know? I mean, you ask most people, well, they know about DiMaggio and Mays and Williams and things like that, but sometimes Stan outside of the Midwest is a bit of an afterthought, I think.
Well, that's one of the reasons I have convinced the publishers that they should pay me to do this book, because I believe
Good reason.
I believe exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Musial, I believe, is, first of all, there's no single statistic, no single label that you can put on Musial that you can put on everybody else. You know, Willie Mays, you think of Mays in the catch, you think of Ted Williams hitting 400, DiMaggio 56 in a row, Babe Ruth 60 home runs. Musial was just good at what Musial did was a harder thing than any of those. He hit 331 for 25 years. And he played, again, what I said, and he was never in controversy. There was no scandal about him. There was nothing that caused him to rise above the crowd in terms of sensationalism. He was just a great player, and it's one of the reasons I want to do this book. I want people, everybody in St. Louis, everybody who's a Cardinal fan, everybody who's seen the outfield wall with all those pictures, and there's Musial on that wall. Everybody who's seen that knows that Stan Musial was a great player. I want to show them when he was absolutely the best. I want to tell them they know he's a great player. They don't know why they know that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to explain that. I had lunch with Musial at the St. Louis Rams football camp one time. I only met him in later life 3 times, just briefly. But the PR director of the Rams football team invited me to lunch. Musial and Jack Buck were there. So I sat at lunch with them. And it was interesting. That was a year, I don't know what year, but Mark McGwire was hitting home runs like crazy, 70 home runs, whatever year that was. And Musial said that it was interesting in that he said that they never thought of Babe Ruth's record of 60 as the record. They thought of that as the New York record. Like there was a major league and there was New York. New York was something separate from the rest of baseball. And so that it stuck in my mind that that's the way that Musial thought. He was playing in a different league than the Yankees. Not that the Yankees were better, just that they got all the attention. And so that's what I want to do. I want to show how good Musial was at a time when he was as good as anybody could ever be.
Well, I'll certainly look forward to it. I'm sure a lot of other baseball fans will too. Thank you.
I'm very sorry for that interruption.
Okay.
If I'm sorry, I hit my phone trying to look up a Stan Musial record. And I had a question, I guess 2 questions. One is, I'm sorry. Yeah. Where did that
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Stance come from? Was he just a natural with that stance?
I think so. Again, that's a good question. And I'll try to find out, because in all the stuff that I've read, there's never any, he just talks about how it worked for him. He never tells why it ever happened that way. Why he was always crouched like that. It was just kind of the natural way that he picked up a baseball bat and hit balls. But I'll try to find out. Good question.
Okay. And the other thing is, I am old enough to remember seeing him play on television and so forth. I was in North Carolina, where I live now, but the 1962 season, he had such a comeback from the standpoint of batting average. I think it went from like around 270, 280 up to 330 that year. And then, of course, in 63, he was back down a little bit in the average. And of course, by that time, he was certainly aging. But I can't recall why the 62 season he had a sudden rise in his batting average.
Well, in 60 and 61, I know he was, I think he had an appendicitis problem one of those years. He was sick one of those years, and the Cardinals had a new manager. Johnny Keane had resigned and gone to the Yankees. Sally Hemus became the manager. And Sally Hemus, for some reason, had the idea that Musial was too old to play anymore. So he put him on the bench, and Musial was, sulking maybe, but he was not happy with the way that he was being treated by Hemus. Hemus was using him only against right-handed pitchers, as if he hadn't spent 20 years, killing every left-handed pitcher there was. But he made him a platoon player in the outfield. And Musial was unhappy in those years. In 62, he had one last good year. He was healthy all year, and he played I looked it up the other day. He played 120 games, I think, that year out of 162, and had a kind of a typical Musial year, but that was really his last year. And I've got some in '63. He was really over the hill, and even he admitted it in his own autobiography that he could no longer concentrate at the plate. Branch Rickey was then serving as kind of a senior advisor to the Cardinals. And I've got several notes of Rickey reporting to the Cardinals upper management, reporting to Bing Devine that it's time for Musial to go away. He can't play. He's a liability in the outfield. He can't run anymore. He's no longer a hitter that he was. It was time for him to retire. I probably won't get to that part of it in the book because I want to do a happy book. I want to do a book that's joyful, because I think the Cardinals in those years in the 40s and 50s were the Yankees of the National League. Musial never played in a World Series after 46. That was the Red Sox World Series, where Enos Slaughter scores from first base to win Game 7, scores from first on a single to win Game 7. Musial was never in a World Series after that. The Cardinals were running second to the Dodgers every year. I think they may have finished second 4 or 5 times in the 60s before they got in the late 50s through the 60s, but they were never won another pennant with Musial.
Yeah.
The year after he left, right? 64 they did. I think.
Yeah, 64 they got Lou Brock. They
Yep.
traded Ernie Broglio for Lou Brock, one of the great steals of all time. And the Cardinals, as soon as Musial was general manager then, they moved him up to the front office. He retired, and they immediately made him general manager.
I always thought, and I don't know, you may have encountered this or have an opinion of it. Living on the East Coast, I heard a lot more about Ted Williams than I did Stan Musial. And it seemed like he was covered a lot more, maybe because of his controversies and so forth, as opposed to Musial's lack of controversy. But I always wondered how Musial's knowledge of Musial would have been so much greater had he happened to play in one of the cities, say in the Northeast, such as Boston or New York or a place like that. That I say that as somebody who lived in North Carolina.
Yeah, no doubt of that. No doubt. Williams courted controversy. The Boston press created controversy when there was none. And it was in the New York media area, Boston and New York. And I won't say Musial was a better hitter than Ted Williams. Ted Williams was a great hitter. Musial was a better baseball player than Ted Williams, better fielder, better runner, better at everything, better person than Ted Williams. But Williams was a great hitter. But I think the thing you touch on there, just no controversy. Musial, the only controversy in Musial's life in baseball, at least, and I'll deal with that in 46. In 46, the Mexican League, of all things, was raiding the major leagues for players. And they made a great offer to Musial. I say a great offer, then it was like $175,000 for 5 years. You get that for about 5 minutes nowadays. But that was a lot of money in 1946. And Musial was tempted, but not really. And I'm dealing with that a lot. I will deal with that a lot in this book. Happened in the mid-season of 46. Max Lanier was a great left-handed pitcher, left the Cardinals to go play in the Mexican League. Mickey Owen had been a catcher with the Dodgers, went to the Mexican League. Several players did. Mexican League collapsed after 2 years. But other than that, there was never a bump in Musial's life. The only thing that ever happened with Musial during his time was that he always thought he was underpaid. And he was for a long time. because all players were underpaid for a long time. After the 42 season, when Musial had led the league in hitting, the Cardinals had won the World Series. The Cardinals owner at that time, a guy named Sam Breeden, offered Musial $10,000 a year and said, if you don't want it, you can just stay home. We'll play without you. And that was the reserve clause at the time. The players had no leverage in contract negotiations. So Musial had to take what the Cardinals gave him, and he resented that throughout his career until finally he became, I think, the first $100,000 player in the National League. He was always worried that DiMaggio was making more money than him.
I think Bob has a question.
Yeah, it goes a year beyond your book, but one of the things I come across as I read, there's lots and lots of books on Robinson and the integration of Major League Baseball, and it seems that over and over again, Musial emerges as one of the good guys. In fact, one of the few good guys, especially on that team that had guys like Marty Marion and Enos Slaughter, who were not known for their liberal thoughts on racial issues. So that would be I think that's what helps Musial, or would be a nice hook to hang on Musial, that he was, by all accounts I've seen, a man without prejudice, which was not common in that time. But which brings me to my question. Feel free to talk about that if you'd like. But aside from Joe Garagiola, has anybody ever said anything publicly bad about Stan Musial?
I don't think so. And Garagiola's thing was more a business thing than anything else. They had some kind of business squabble. Garagiola, I forget what it was, but that's the only negative thing. Musial grew up with not Ken Griffey Jr.'s father, but Ken Griffey's grandfather in Denora, who was a very good football player and baseball player. I think so. Musial had exposure to black players before he became to the major leagues. And I think it was his nature. It was his nature to not cause trouble, not to make waves. There's a friend has told me a great anecdote of an all-star game in the 50s where Frank Robinson, Hank Aaron, and Ernie Banks are sitting at a card table in the dugout. And Musial just walks over and says, "Deal me in." Just, as you would with any normal athlete. But he saw that they were sitting off by themselves, and he joined them. So I think that, and he was silent during the whole Robinson time. Again, that was his, he was not a philosopher. Musial was not a philosopher. He was not a deep thinker. He was not a guy who was marching for civil rights or against civil rights. He just wanted to play baseball. He was just a kid playing baseball, and he made no waves. He had, I think, just his silence spoke a lot. There were players on the Cardinals at the time who were deep South, who resented Robinson wasn't there in 46, but everyone knew he was coming. He was in Montreal, the Dodgers AAA team at the time. He was going to be there in 47. So there were people on the Cardinals team, and especially, and as I said earlier, the Cardinals were not a deep South team, but they were the southernmost team in the major league system. And they drew a lot of their fans from Mississippi, Arkansas, Southeast. So, and St. Louis at the time was a highly segregated city. It had been a Negro League city, St. Louis Stars. Oscar Charleston had played there. Cool Papa Bell was a St. Louis native. So just his silence, I think, spoke more than anything else at the time. But he was never one of the people that there was an alleged boycott. The Cardinals were going to boycott the Dodgers when they came to town. Never happened, of course. And Happy Chandler who was then the commissioner, told me once, and this gets back to Karen's question a minute ago, fact and fiction. I knew Happy Chandler well. I worked in Kentucky for 12 years. I got to know him in his later years. Happy was full of stories about Jackie Robinson, about Branch Rickey, about the Cardinals. All those stories, fact or fiction, they smelled like fiction to me because Happy was always the hero of the stories. Happy was always the guy who said that 15 owners voted against Robinson's entrance into the National League. Only one, Branch Rickey, wanted him in the league. And Happy said, and I took up for the one. Well, I think the historical record is almost just the opposite of that. But Musial is not on record anyway, other than just by his actions and his upbringing, where he came from. You know, all he wanted to do was play baseball and get paid for it. He was not a crusader of any kind, and he never caused any trouble that way, and certainly was never one of the alleged ringleaders of the Cardinals' boycott of the Dodgers, which never happened. Again, Happy took credit for hitting that off too. He told the Cardinals that if they boycotted Robinson, he would dismiss all of them from the league. None of that ever happened.
You have a follow-up on that, Bob, or did that answer your questions?
No, thank you very much. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Raise your hand. I do while we have a break here. Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to know if I'm Don from St. Petersburg. I love Stan Musial. When I first moved down here, the Cardinals were still training in St. Pete, and he would come to a game and he'd wear his Cardinal red jacket, have the harmonica in the hand, and he would take me out to the ball game for the fans. And a lot of people just enjoyed him. They didn't swamp him. They just let him walk through the stands, and he was just a part of spring training every year with the Cardinals. So I didn't see him play. I just knew that he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I looked up his stats and I saw how incredible his stats were. My question about your book is, are you going to go into the Enos Slaughter part of the 46 World Series and how controversial he could have been with the Cardinals? He was considered a clubhouse lawyer, and a lot of people thought that was why he got shipped to the Yankees in '54. I was wondering, is Enos Slaughter going to be a part of your book, or is that going to be a very small part of the book?
Enos Slaughter will be a big part of the book. Enos Slaughter is a North Carolina guy, and he was alleged to be one of the people who did not like the idea of Jackie Robinson in the major leagues. Again, there was no evidence that there was any boycott, but certainly Slaughter was one of the people who let it be known that he was not happy with Jackie Robinson coming to the major leagues. And there's a story, and you can't tell if it's real or if it's fiction, again, of Slaughter spiking Robinson at first base. He bunted, allegedly. I'm not going to deal with this, I don't think, but I don't know. Haven't written a word of it yet. But Slaughter bunts. First baseman picks up the bunt. Robinson playing second base, covers the base, and Slaughter intentionally spikes him in the Achilles heel as Robinson is covering first base. There's no doubt that there was a collision of some kind. Whether it was intentional or not is the question. But certainly and Slaughter was that kind of guy. Slaughter was a tough guy. He had come up from nothing. He had come up literally from nothing. Driving mules to carry hay in from the farm. He was a tough guy. I don't think clubhouse lawyer had anything to do with him being traded to the Yankees. That came later. He was still a good player. I forget who they traded him for, but he played for a long time with the Yankees, and he finally got in the Hall of Fame where he probably belonged. He was close to 3,000 hits. He was a good player, a great outfielder, and he was an integral part of the great Cardinal teams before Musial got there. He was older than Musial. He was maybe 5 or 6 years older than Musial even. Musial in 46, I believe, was the MVP in the league, and Slaughter was second. They were 1 and 2.
It's good. I'm looking forward to your book. Also glad I have a chance to just say hi to you and
yeah.
And thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And you mentioning that harmonica reminds me that the last time I saw Musial was in Louisville, Kentucky Derby. Jack Buck and Musial. I'm in a room with Sports Illustrated people having dinner the night before the Derby. Musial and Jack Buck come into the room, and Musial takes out his harmonica. And I know what you just said. He plays Take Me Out to the Ball Game. So I'm expecting this is going to be great. Musial is going to play Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And he starts playing, and he's playing My Old Kentucky Home. And he played it great.
That's fantastic.
Perfect.
Let me account for couple things in the chat. Alec talked about his uncle in Maine and is 94 and no doubt recalls the 46 series. So Alec, I don't know if you're volunteering to put Dave in touch with him or what.
Yeah, I'll ask him. He likes to talk. He has a lot of good memories, and I will connect you guys. That'd be great.
That would be wonderful. And if you can't
that would be great.
Yeah, Dave's email is easy. It's inkstained@aol.com. So, but you can reach out to me too from this, so I can put you in touch.
Yeah.
That's it. Did you say that again, Dave? I didn't catch it.
That would be great. That would be great if we could make that happen. That would be great. If he remembers anything.
Yeah, that would be great. Other questions? I have kind of a parting question, but I wanted to give everybody a chance here.
If I could, I'd like to ask one question on a little different tone. You obviously have written so many things over your career, and like in preparing this book, from the standpoint of the craft of writing, do you outline things or you just write?
He makes piles in his office.
Well, I outline things, but I outline them vaguely. I don't outline them point by point. I know kind of the beginning, middle, and the end, and how I get there is the art of it. I don't outline. I have millions of notes. I'll have millions of notes, and I'll know where they all fit somewhere. But what I like about writing is the fact that the best thing that happens when you're writing is when you write a sentence that you didn't know you were going to write, and it's good. That happens once a month. But when it happens, it feels really good. So I try to just let it happen. Try to let it flow. One sentence grows out of the last one, but have some idea where it's going. It's not without a roadmap. But I just know I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. I just know I'm going to get to the end.
Yeah.
And
well, I'm sure you write sentences that turn out well more than the ordinary person.
Well, I don't know about that, but people have kept paying me to do it.
I wanted to regroup real quick on something Ryan said about the book on the White Sox in 2005. And this is one of the books that I contributed to, but I just kind of want to show you the value, what you get with a SABR membership. And these books are 95 generally. What's that, Dave?
It says the 20-game losers. I've never heard of
that
book.
Yeah, 20-game losers. Mine was on Cecil Ferguson because my grandparents' last name was Ferguson, like in the early 1900s. So yeah, and there's one about to come out on 1-game winners.
Ned Garber was one of those.
He might be. I'll bring this.
Ned Garber, a 20-game loser.
I'm looking for him I haven't seen him yet, so.
Yes, he was
I
with
think
the
he
St.
was.
Louis Browns.
He was
Yeah.
like the best. Yeah, I think he was the best pitcher who ever lost 20 games.
Well, he didn't make this book, it doesn't look like, so. I know the editor because we've worked with him a lot, so we might have
I
to
thought
throw
it
a
was-
flag.
I thought it was with the St. Louis Browns in 1953, I think, or
Okay.
52, 53.
I
Yeah,
think that's right.
one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. I have one parting thought here. You said, what's the hook to kind of hang on Musial? It's the fact that, of course, he had 3,630 hits. And as the real Cardinal fans know, it was 1,815 at home and 1,815 on the road. I don't think there's any Hall of Famer that can make that claim. That's an incredible coincidence.
The consistency of his statistics is amazing.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
people thought that after, he had the 3 WAR years, 42, 43, 44.
Mhm.
People thought, well, maybe that's because the pitchers are not as good. But the pitchers were better when everybody came back, and he was better when everybody came back.
Yes. Right.
And
Yeah.
his numbers month by month, right-handers against left-handers, on the road, at home, night, day. He's hitting 330 and 340 against everybody all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay, Dave, I thank you. I'm gonna ask, this is kind of like asking how many jelly beans are in the jar, but is he still there? Oh, there you are. You went to my top corner, but you've covered a lot of World Series live, and I didn't prep him for this, so everybody knows, but is there any memorable moments or one memorable moment you could share that you witnessed live from a World Series?
Well, Carlton Fisk home run in Game 6 of the 75 World Series.
Yeah.
In the 12th inning against the Reds. Yeah, I was in Louisville when the Big Red Machine was big in Cincinnati, so I went to those World Series. I remember that one. Also, what was it, 77 when Reggie Jackson hit 3 straight home runs. I think he hit 3 straight home runs on 3 pitches.
I think you're right. First pitch.
The last one was Charlie Huff. Knuckleball, and he hit it like 450 feet into the blacked out part of center field at Yankee Stadium. And then I think he hit a home run the first at bat the next day too. But I remember that, I happened to be near a place where after a game at Dodger Stadium, Reggie had done something. I think it was a base running controversy. And Reggie
where he
walked
stuck his
by
hip.
me just because. What?
He stuck his hip out and let the ball deflect off.
And Reggie walked by me, and he walked by me just because I happened to be there where he was going. And he saw that I was a newspaper guy, and he says, "You can love me or you can hate me, but you can't ignore me." And he was right about that.
Yeah. Great. Well, I sure want to thank you. I don't know if there's any administrative, Ryan or Chad, that we need to talk about, but really appreciate you giving us your time, Dave, to talk. And I assume those that are our members and those that aren't, that follow us, we'll be working on programming for the spring, so stay tuned. And Dave, if we don't get that connection, I'll make sure I get it for you as far as Alex's grandfather. So otherwise, unless nobody has anything else, we can go ahead and adjourn.
Jeff,
go ahead, Dave.
What, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
On Ted Williams. A minute ago, I said, I interviewed Williams. I went to Florida and met him at his house when he was maybe 76 years old, 75 years old. Bob Knight, the basketball coach, was a big friend of Ted Williams. I was a friend of Knight's. Knight set me up to go see Ted Williams. And because Williams was creating a hitter's Hall of Fame of some kind, his own Hall of Fame in Ocala, Florida. So I went down there and sat with him. and it was like the best interview of all time. He was great the whole time. He had a dog named Slugger, of course. Oh, here's a guy saying, "Oh, I see, Francis. He never lost 20 games. Oh, he won 20." Anyway, and he had a dog named Slugger who kept interrupting the interview. But Williams was great then. Changed my whole opinion of him as a person. He was as good as you could get. It was one of my favorite interviews of all time, and it's in that book that you showed a minute ago, Jeff. Glove Stories. Ted Williams' story is in there. One of my favorites.
And I believe Chad put a link to it in.
Anyway, I thank you all. Thank you for the questions. That's Pee Wee Reese's jersey, by the way. In that picture.
Oh, yeah, and guys, that's his glove. If I get it close enough, that's his glove from college that he still writes with. I should have had you bring it to show us.
Desk.
Yep.
So
thanks so much, Dave, and thanks for everybody for joining. Feel free.
Thank you all. Thank everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
wonderful evening, guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right, take care.
What do we do now? Just shut it off?
I guess there's a leave button at the bottom right. If you hover over.
Stop video.
Yeah, look at the bottom right where it says leave. There you go. You see it, Dave? Well, if nothing else, close the window. All right. Thanks, guys.
That's all right. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
I think our new member might have been on this, Chad, or Ryan. So
Yes, he was.
okay,
Which is
I'll
great.
try to reach out to him as well. Says my
Fantastic.
says
Thank
my
you,
arm,
everybody.
says my arm heals from being pulled behind my back. So so all
Thank
right.
you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Have a
Take
good
care,
night.
guys. See ya.